TV.
What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. All right, so before I go forward, I want to give a shout out to the brother Omari Parker for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. And he wanted me to do a video on do I think uh, do I think that JFK Jr. would have run for president had he lived? Now, for those of you who are very, very young, subscribe to me. John F. Kennedy Jr. was the son of President John F. Kennedy. And the country was first introduced to John F. Kennedy Jr., or John, as the media referred to him, although that's not what the family called him. This was what actually happened was reporters mistakenly thought President Kennedy was calling him John when he was really just saying his first name in quick succession, and they thought that that was his name. But anyway, the country was introduced to John when he was a toddler in the White House. He barely remembers, as he grew older, barely remembered his experience in the White House as a baby, 1, 2, maybe 3-year-old. I think one of the most memorable images that people have of John F. Kennedy Jr. when he was, I think, barely 3 years old, and the funeral procession for his father was going on in Washington, D.C., and his mother nudged him to salute his father's coffin as it was passing by, I think, on the carriage. And I think that's one of the most poignant memories of John, as, like I said, as he was called when he was a little boy by the media. But they watched him grow up. He and his sister Caroline. And he grew up into a very successful, generally at least, a very successful young man. He didn't fall victim to some of the things that happened with like other presidential kids like Patty Davis, where she had substance abuse issues, whatever. Um, he became a very beloved celebrity in the 80s and 90s. His mother, Jackie Kennedy, did as much as possible, and I think it was very beneficial actually, to shield the kids from the paparazzi, the media, and she allowed them to have as much of a regular, normal upbringing as possible. And I think that's why, like I said, they were pretty normal, adjusted people for the most part. Um, at the time of his passing, if I remember correctly, it was July of 1999. And he and his wife, I think her name was Jacqueline Bissett, they died in a plane crash, if I'm not mistaken. And I still remember when it happened. I think it happened like shortly after they had attended a tennis match or something to that effect. Wimbledon match or something. My memory's a little bit hazy on that. But anyway, he was only 38 years old when he died. And I do remember there was a lot of speculation about him entering politics when he died at the time of his death. He was still young. He had a very magnetic personality. Now, whether or not he had the fire and the ambition to run for political office, I don't know. But he definitely had a certain magnetism about himself, and he definitely had his father's charm. Some people say that he wasn't necessarily blessed with his father's intellect, and I do remember the magazine that he had founded, George Magazine, was struggling. So some people say, well, maybe that's an indication he's not quite his father. But I do know this. I think had he lived, and this is just my guess, right? I think had he lived, he probably would have ran for the United States Senate seat that was about to be opened by the retirement of Patrick Moynihan. Because what actually happened was that's the Senate seat that Hillary Clinton ran for and won in 2000 against Rick Lazio, right? Now, Rick Lazio became the GOP nominee because the person who most people thought was going to be the Republican nominee, and that was New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, bowed out the race, I should say, because he had been recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, if I remember correctly. So he was dealing with his health issues. So Rick Lazio, who nobody really fucking knew, ran against Hillary Clinton, and she won that election, and she's the one that succeeded longtime United States Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And then we all know ultimately that was a stepping stone for her to run for president in 2008, albeit she was defeated in the primaries by Barack Obama. Now, had JFK Jr. lived and he decided to run for that Senate seat, you got to remember this was 25 years ago. So a lot of people who remembered JFK was still alive. People in the media, although a bit older, were still prominent in the media that remembered JFK. His name was John F. Kennedy, for crying out loud. Arguably, people thought he was even better looking than his father. Now, I do believe if he had ran for that seat, Hillary probably would not have ran. Hillary probably would have maybe run for a Senate seat, maybe the Senate seat in Illinois in 2000. I'm trying to remember if there was an opening or not. I can't recall. If there was, maybe she should have ran for Illinois because that's where she was originally born anyway. And that would have changed the trajectory of history in so many different ways. But I do believe that if John F. Kennedy ran against Rick Lazio, he would have beaten the shit out of him. Now, of course, you can't just directly run for president. Usually, especially at that age, you kind of have to. People tend to want to see you pay your dues. So I think if he was going to run for president, he would have been in the Senate, similar to the amount of time that to the time that Hillary Clinton was there. Elected in 2000. I think if he was going to run for president, it was probably going to be in 2008. And something tells me that if he had ran for president in 2008, right? I don't know what tells me this, but I think that he might have ran with Barack Obama as his vice president, right? Now, this is the thing, now. This is the kicker, though. JFK Jr. was not as liberal as the Democratic Party is today, if I remember saying correctly. He was liberal, but not far out there. If I recall, I don't think he was big. Matter of fact, let me look up some of the things that I'm trying to remember about him. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, he was more or less like a centrist. He wasn't a far out liberal. Um, he was more of a consensus guy. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that JFK, if he had ran in 2008, he would be the one candidate that could run with Barack Obama, and it wouldn't really hurt him politically. That would have elevated the black vote anyway, because still black people would have seen the first black vice president, right? And JFK Jr. I think would have had like a kind of a weird. Um, I think he would have had a weird sort of constituency where he would have had some right wing support, not super right wing, not racist, but some who are concerned about real issues that Republicans are concerned about, quote unquote woke agendas, and what Republicans have always been concerned about: too much power being concentrated in the federal government, uh, spending, bloated government. JFK was, like I said, JFK Jr. was very similar to his father when it came to his political beliefs. Trying to find out trying to look at some of these things. Yeah. Um, he was not a guy I think that would have done a lot of mudslinging. He would have been kind of like try to be above the fray, almost like a Hubert Humphrey type. Not necessarily liberal, but his campaign probably been more about how Barack's was: hope and change and bipartisanship. A lot of the themes that Barack Obama was for, I think JFK would have been similar. His first term, that first campaign, I could see JFK Jr. maybe supporting, civil unions, but not necessarily gay marriage. Um, he was for civil rights, obviously. He was for fairness, but you know, and also true. If he hadn't entered politics, some of the shine would have went down a little bit, because when you enter into politics, you're going to become more partisan by nature on as far as your views, and there are going to be some people who now all of a sudden who likes you or looked at you a certain way. They're going to look at you a little differently because you're going to say some things or have some beliefs that they don't agree with. But yeah, I think he could have. I mean, look, man, Donald Trump became president. So there's, look, in 2008, JFK Jr. had been 48 years old. So it's definitely a possibility he could have been elected president. I don't put it past a country that elected Donald Trump twice. Yeah, I could definitely see JFK Jr. running for president if he chose to. But would he have had The thing I'm wondering is, would he have had the patience and the desire to go through a presidential campaign? And did he really want to be president? Was it really something that was in him? Because, he would have had to, look, it's a lot to live up to. Now, of course, you could say, well, look, we've had sons follow their fathers to become president. John Quincy Adams was the son of John Adams. George W. Bush was the son of George H.W. Bush. Benjamin Harrison was the grandson of William Henry Harrison. So it's not unprecedented to have a son become president whose father was president. But George W. Bush had that passion, though. Much as, no matter how you felt about him personally, he had that passion about him, like that burning ambition. Once the call, you know, once the calling for what he felt was his destiny hit him, which was I think in the mid '90s, he knew he was going to run for president. I don't know about JFK Jr. Did he have the fire in the belly for it? That's the big question. I do think it's likely that he would have ran for governor. President, like I said, I don't know. But I mean, I'm looking at the Democratic Party in the 2000s, and if you have JFK Jr. as the governor of New York, or the Senate, or a senator from New York, um, I'm looking at the unpopularity. If everything still rolled out the way it did, the unpopularity of the Iraqi War, a very unpopular president. The In 2008, that office was wide open. Bush was term limited. Dick Cheney did not want to run for health reasons, and the Democrats, with an altered history, is Hillary even run for president in this scenario? So, who were the other contenders in 2008 in real life outside of Hillary and Barack Obama? Joe Biden, John Edwards, whose political career faltered, because of their personal scandals. Plus, Jacqueline Bissett was a beautiful woman, a beautiful couple running to be the face of the country as far as president and vice president. I could see it. The question is, did he want to be president? That's the thing. But anyway, tell me what you guys think. And yes, if I haven't said this, by the way, in 2008, if he ran against John McCain, I could see RFK Jr. beating him. And I could see him, and I don't know if I don't know if he would have been the orator that Barack Obama was, but I can see this. Um, it's not Barack's style to be a hatchet man, to be a flamethrower. Uh, but I can see Barack Obama being a little bit more of an attack dog if I don't want to say attack dog, but a little bit more aggressive if he's the VP. JFK Jr., I could just see them trying to portray him as the rock star. The same way that they had Barack Obama, it would have been even more amplified if John F. Kennedy, the son of the most popular president we've had in recorded history, runs. I'm telling you, I could see it. I could see him clobbering McCain, clobbering him in that election in 2008. Like 400 electoral votes. I could see it. States like Missouri, states like shit, Montana, that was very close. I could even see him maybe making West Virginia, putting that in play. I could see it because I think he would have had appeal to independents and some Republicans who had tired of Bush. I could see it with him because look, Barack Obama won 53% of the vote in 2008, and he had a handicap politically, a political handicap. I mean, let's be honest, right? Some people just would not vote for him, and some Democrats abstained from voting for him because of the color of his skin. JFK would not have had that problem. And black people still would have came out and voted enthusiastically for this ticket because Barack Obama may very well have been on this ticket as the VP. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.